Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time we got a few questions, starting with this one from Beastly Arrow, who asked, "Hey Thor, what do you think about the recent hashtag renew the Acolyte trend? Personally, I understand the desire for a second season by the people that liked the Acolyte. However, I don't understand the common reason why it should be renewed is because the Clone Wars was also bad in the first few seasons, but it went on to become a good show because it was given a proper chance. Not only does every metric suggest that the Acolyte was unsuccessful, but this sentiment is also an acknowledgement by its own fans that the show was bad. Also, I personally don't think the first few seasons of the Clone Wars are as bad as people seem to remember. There were plenty of good episodes, like the first one, which was an excellent story and a great message for people of all ages, unlike the Acolyte's convoluted and concerning message." And yeah, even though I personally don't want the Acolyte to get a second season, I think I've made that pretty clear, I can still understand the desire and now the fight with the Save the Acolyte hashtag by those who really enjoyed it and want more of it and all that. I don't necessarily fault them for wanting more of something they enjoyed. I don't agree with it, but hey, you can do you. But the problem is, all of their arguments, like the one you're bringing up here comparing it to the Clone Wars, they don't make a lot of sense when you really stop and think about it. They continue to ignore the main reason why it got cancelled. I mean, the Clone Wars, even when it quote-unquote got good in the later seasons, which, yeah, I do think it got better as the show went on. I'm not saying the first couple were bad, but they weren't as good as the later seasons. Anyway, the Clone Wars was always going to have a smaller or more niche following or audience. It was never intended to be this huge thing that attracted a massive and wide audience or brought in the general audience member or casual viewer. It was an animated show on Cartoon Network that was, if we're kind of keeping it real here, that was aimed primarily at a younger audience and was basically funded by George Lucas himself as a sort of experiment or just something he wanted to do because he could, because it was basically all his money on the line. And though it wasn't exactly cheap to produce the Clone Wars, it was nowhere near the amount of money it is to produce something like the Acolyte. And all you gotta do is look at the box office results for the Clone Wars movies to know that no, this was never ever going to catch on and again go mainstream, shall we say. Though yes, it did get quite the following from the younger generation at the time, the targeted audience, as well as some of the hardcore adult Star Wars fans, myself included. It also sold a lot of toys, a ton of them. Toy aisles were jam-packed with Clone War stuff back in the day, as compared to virtually nothing from the Acolyte, but a few, if we're being honest again, kind of boring-looking Jedi action figures, which aren't going to draw the attention of kids, and will only be purchased by adult collectors, and probably only the ones who liked the show. And so with it being cheaper to produce, with it being all Lucas's money to risk, and with it having a strong younger viewership that was buying toys or asking their parents to buy toys, even if the first couple seasons are not regarded as masterpieces, Lucas could apparently justify continuing it even if it likely wasn't making him a ton of money, because again, owning the company and with it being all his money, he didn't have any shareholders to be obligated to, and thus the Clone Wars went on for multiple seasons, again despite any rough start it may have had. That is until Lucasfilm was sold to Disney and they didn't see the value in continuing it. While on the other hand here, the whole point of the Acolyte from the Disney and Lucasfilm perspective, from the business side of things, was for the show to blow up and go mainstream and to sell a streaming service essentially, and to help promote the Star Wars franchise on the whole, to help sell the brand, or to maybe kind of fix it after some trying and difficult times here, as well as to sell some merchandise. That is what Disney spent $180 million on. They don't care about the story, they don't care if it was left hanging, they care about did it succeed in doing what it was supposed to do from their point of view. And that is it, full stop. That is what the show's intent was, again from the business side of things, which is all that matters to Disney and the shareholders they have a fiduciary responsibility to. They can't just say to their shareholders, we know the first season lost a ton of money, but there's this show called The Clone Wars that kind of started off rough, got really good later on, and then became maybe marginally profitable for Lucas. It's hard to say just how much he did or did not make off that show. And honestly here, if you want a better or more fair or worthwhile comparison here, something that actually makes sense to compare it to, If you really want to understand why the Acolyte was canceled or face the reality of it, it should be compared to the first season of The Mandalorian, something that is very similar to when you realize they both introduced a new time period, more or less with The Mandalorian, and had all brand new characters and a new sort of premise for a Star Wars show. But The Mandalorian drew a massive audience, also a wide audience. It brought in a lot of more casual or average viewers from beyond the fandom, and it also created an iconic character that not only sold them a ton of merchandise, but can potentially sell future projects like the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. I mean, there's a very good reason why that's the film bringing Star Wars back to the big screen in a little under 2 years. Because they know people loved the characters and literally bought them. They feel like that's their best bet to bring in a big audience to help revive, again, the kind of floundering Star Wars franchise and brand, and to also sell a lot more Baby Yoda merch. In other words, one was highly successful and did everything they would want a Star Wars show to do, while the other one simply didn't. But anyway, let's now move on to a couple more questions here, a couple quick ones, starting with this one from Sergeant AJ, who asked, "Hey Thor, a couple days ago I looked on social media and saw that people who were upset over the Acolyte being cancelled are inexplicably attacking the Ahsoka series. I honestly don't get it, because while I personally enjoyed the Ahsoka series, I am willing to admit they are not perfect, but I don't think Ahsoka is to blame for the Acolyte being cancelled. I am curious to know your thoughts on this." And I would say the Ahsoka series being renewed has almost nothing to do with the Acolyte being cancelled. There's not a direct connection here, but I mean, obviously there is only a certain number of Star Wars shows that Disney and Lucasfilm are going to produce. So when they decide on one, that of course means there are less slots for others. However, I don't think that means there was a choice between the two or anything like it. We even recently heard from insiders that the Acolyte was kind of being prepared for a second season, but was then canceled last minute based on viewership. Which again means it all comes down to money. If the Acolyte had indeed brought in the viewership, if they saw it as something profitable and good for the brand, it simply would have been renewed regardless of Ahsoka being renewed or not. In fact, I'm sure Disney likes renewing shows because that means they were successful in the first place, and that the second season is likely going to be a success too, and that it is much, much less of a risk for them. So yeah, I would say they have virtually nothing to do with each other. Alright, next up, this question from Turtleflu, who asked, "Hey Thor, I'm curious what your thoughts are on who should take over Lucasfilm after Kennedy." And I would say the next president of Lucasfilm, whenever Kennedy leaves, be that sooner or later, is unlikely to be anyone on the, let's call it, fans' radar. I doubt it's going to be anyone we know or want or have even likely heard of. In other words, it's not going to be a Dave Filoni or someone like that. I highly doubt that. Though that said, who would I like? Who would get my vote? It would probably be Jon Favreau. Not that I think he has a strong chance either, though he probably would have a chance considering he does have a lot of experience in the industry, so I don't think it's impossible to see him. Though who knows if he even wants the job. So yeah, when it happens, I'm pretty sure we'll all be saying who and hoping they do a much, much better job than Kennedy. Though if it were up to me, I'd give it to Jon Favreau. At least that's the vote I'd give off the top of my head. Alright, let's do one more quick one here, and it comes to us from Rivelaw, who asked, "Hey Thor, do you think there is a place behind the camera for Sam Witwer as a creative?" And I would say yes, probably. Because I don't know that he should be writing or directing or anything quite like that, though I don't know that he shouldn't be either because we don't have any real examples of his work. I would love for him to maybe get a chance to write an episode of an animated series or something like that. Should that be something he even wants to do? Not everyone enjoys writing. And if that's maybe not his thing, or if he's maybe not great at it, I think he should absolutely be sitting in the writer's room listening to these creatives as they toss their ideas around, because there are few people, if any, that I've ever heard from, save Lucas himself, that seem to truly get Star Wars the way he does, that sees it the way he does, to say nothing of the fact that clearly he has a passion for it. So yeah, I think he should be involved in the creative process somehow. I think he should be on the Lucasfilm Story Group, or hell, he should just be the Lucasfilm Story Group. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about any of this, or of my answers to any of these questions, or feel free to give your own answers. You can also ask a question for a future lightning response video. All you got to do is start your comment off with "Hey Thor" and then ask away. But whatever you choose to do, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.